Choi Eun-hee gazed out over the glittering Seoul skyline from her penthouse balcony, a flute of untouched champagne in her hand. It was her son's 32nd birthday celebration, yet there he was in the corner of the grand ballroom, looking as distant and lonely as ever. Guests mingled in designer gowns and tailored suits, but Min-jun stood apart, his posture stiff in a sharp tuxedo. Eun-hee could see the polite smile on his face, barely masking his disinterest, as yet another heiress attempted to flirt with him. He nodded mechanically at the woman's lavish compliments, eyes flicking toward the exit. Eun-hee sighed, her heart clenching. My poor Min-jun, she thought, surrounded by people, and yet so alone. She had thrown this extravagant party hoping her son might connect with someone genuine. But glancing around at the opulence, crystal chandeliers, gourmet canapes, a string quartet playing softly, she realized any chance of genuineness had likely been smothered by all the luxury. The women swarming him tonight only saw the heir to the Choi fortune, not the man himself. She noticed Min-jun discreetly slipping away from his would-be suitor and heading toward the side doors of the hall. He thought no one saw him leave, but his mother's eyes were sharp. Excusing herself from a group of executives, Eun-hee quietly followed. In the dimly lit corridor outside the ballroom, she found Min-jun leaning against the wall, bow tie undone and eyes closed in frustration. He looked more weary than a man his age should. She approached softly. Min-jun, she called, using the gentle tone she hadn't used since he was a boy. He opened his eyes, startled, then straightened. Mother, he greeted formally, quickly masking his emotions behind a polite expression. Even alone with her, he kept his guard up these days. You left your own party, Eun-hee chided lightly. Everyone's looking for the birthday boy. Min-jun ran a hand through his neatly styled hair, mussing it. I needed some air, he admitted. You know I don't enjoy those setups. He gave her a pointed look. Eun-hee's chest tightened with guilt. Yes, she had invited several eligible young women tonight, hoping one might spark his interest. They just wanted to celebrate with you, she said carefully. He huffed a quiet laugh. Celebrate me or celebrate my bank account. It's always the same superficial game. His voice was bitter. I'm tired of it, Mother. I'm tired of people who only see Choi Min-jun, the CEO, and not Min-jun, the person. Gently, Eun-hee reached out and straightened the lapel of his jacket. A tender, motherly gesture that momentarily softened his eyes. I know, son, she said, sympathy evident. I worry about you. You shut everyone out. Not everyone is like that. Min-jun looked away. Every woman you've pushed at me is exactly like that. They don't care who I am, only what I have. I won't go through that again. Eun-hee knew he was referring to Yura, his ex-fiancée from 3 years ago, who had only wanted his status and wealth. Remembering how devastated Min-jun had been, she felt a surge of protectiveness. Since that betrayal, he had refused to date seriously, burying himself in work and shunning any woman who approached him. Not everyone is Yura, she whispered. There are good people out there. He gave a slight shrug, stepping out of her touch. Maybe, but it's easier this way. I have everything I need, really. Watching her only child put on a brave face, Eun-hee felt her resolve harden. He didn't have everything he needed. With all the riches and success, he was missing the one thing that could truly make him happy, someone to love him for who he was. And if he wouldn't seek it out, she would have to help fate along, without him knowing. As Min-jun squared his shoulders and headed back into the ballroom to appease the guests, Eun-hee lingered in the hall, formulating a plan. She thought of the lengths she had gone to for her company, secret audits, undercover visits to branch offices. If she could go incognito to ensure business quality, why not to ensure her son's happiness? A daring idea struck. She could observe potential candidates for her son from a perspective where their true character showed. Certainly not at glitzy parties like this. Perhaps somewhere ordinary, where her identity would be unknown. Yoon-hee caught her reflection in a gilded mirror. At 58, she still carried herself with the poised elegance of a billionaire CEO, but a mischievous spark lit her eyes. For Min-jun, I can be anyone, she mused. Even a cleaning lady. Yes, as a cleaner. People tended to act as if service staff were invisible. She could watch, test, and find someone who cared nothing for money. And she already had someone in mind. A young woman a friend had mentioned recently, praised for her generous heart and amazing cooking, who volunteered at a community kitchen. Clutching the champagne flute, Eun-hee allowed herself a small, determined smile in the empty corridor. She had built an empire with shrewd wit and bold moves. Surely she could secretly build a love story for her son. Operation Undercover Mother began now. Choi Eun-hee didn't have to search long. The following week, under the guise of volunteering at a community soup kitchen, she observed a young woman named Han Soo-bin in action. In one evening, she saw all she needed to see. The girl cooked with love, treated everyone with genuine kindness, and even gave her own scarf to an elderly diner who was shivering. Soo-bin was exactly the kind of person she hoped for, selfless, compassionate, and not the least bit interested in money or status. By the end of that night, Eun-hee was convinced. She had found a potential match for her son. Now it was time to orchestrate a meeting between Han Soo-bin and Min-jun in a way that felt natural. With a few discreet calls and favors, Eun-hee arranged for Soo-bin's small restaurant to cater an upcoming Choi Corp luncheon, ensuring that her son would cross paths with this extraordinary young chef. A week later, in the sleek lobby of Choi Corporation headquarters, employees were abuzz. The CEO, Choi Min-jun, rarely joined the staff for lunch, yet word had spread that he would attend today's special luncheon to announce a new corporate charity initiative. Behind the buffet counter in the executive dining hall, Soo-bin nervously straightened her apron. She had accepted a last-minute catering job for this event, surprised that her tiny restaurant had been recommended for such a high-profile client. The pay was generous, and she intended to donate a portion back to the community kitchen. Still, her stomach fluttered with nerves. The Choi building was intimidating, and serving a room of executives and VIPs was a far cry from feeding regulars at her cozy eatery. You can do this, she told herself, ladling steaming doenjang jjigae soybean paste stew into elegant bowls. She had prepared a traditional menu, comfort food meant to warm hearts. Platters of bulgogi, neatly arranged banchan, and her homemade kimchi lined the table. As staff and guests filed in, tantalized by the aroma, Soo-bin offered polite smiles and kept everything replenished. On the other side of the room, Min-jun entered with a few board members, wearing a neutral business smile. His attention was immediately caught by the rich scent in the air. It smelled like home cooking, not the usual hotel catering fare. Distracted, he broke away from a conversation and approached the buffet to investigate. Soo-bin was setting out fresh bowls when she stepped back and nearly collided with someone. She gasped as she recognized the man right behind her, tall, impeccably suited, and unmistakably Choi Min-jun. In her surprise, the tray in her hands tilted precariously. Min-jun swiftly reached out, steadying the tray from beneath. Together they averted a spill. Only a few drops of broth splashed onto the floor. "I'm so sorry," Soo-bin blurted, mortified. She set the tray down and grabbed a napkin, immediately crouching to wipe the floor near his shiny leather shoes. "I didn't see you there, sir." "It's all right," Min-jun assured her. He was more startled by her panic than the almost accident. People usually tiptoed around him, but here, this young woman was frantically dabbing at his shoes. "Really, it's fine." She rose, cheeks flushed. Finally meeting his eyes, she mustered a timid smile. "Thank you for helping me catch the tray." Min-jun found himself momentarily speechless. The caterer's eyes were warm and apologetic, her face strikingly pretty despite her obvious nerves. "No harm done," he managed. He noticed her name tag pinned to the apron. Han Soo-bin. So this was the chef who made the incredible stew currently tantalizing him. "The food smells wonderful," he added, a genuine compliment slipping out. Relief flickered across her face. "Thank you. I hope it tastes good." Summoning his professional composure, Min-jun gave a polite nod and stepped aside to let others fill their plates. But as he returned to his table, he chose a seat with a clear view of the catering station. He couldn't help watching Subin move with efficient grace, tending to guests with a gracious demeanor. There was an unaffected warmth about her that stood out in this polished corporate setting. When he finally tasted the stew, his eyes widened slightly. It was delicious, hearty, and comforting, reminding him of a long-forgotten taste of childhood. He ended up eating every spoonful. As the luncheon wrapped up and people trickled back to work, Min-jun made a point to seek out the chef. He found Subin in the kitchen area packing up her utensils. "Miss Han," he said, making her jump a little. She turned to face him, and he offered a hand to shake. "I'm Choi Min-jun. I wanted to thank you. Your cooking made quite an impression." Her eyes widened as she quickly dried her hand on her apron and shook his, hoping he wouldn't notice the slight tremble. "Oh, thank you, Mr. Choi. I'm glad everyone enjoyed the meal." He found himself smiling just a touch. "We'll have to use your catering services again." He wasn't usually this direct, but he had to let her know her work was appreciated. "I mean it. It's been a while since I've had a meal that felt like a home-cooked treat." Subin's face lit up with pride. "I'd be honored to cook for your company again." Before he could say more, an aide appeared to remind Min-jun of an upcoming meeting. He released her hand and straightened. "Until next time, Ms. Han." "Until next time," she echoed softly, watching him stride away. As Subin loaded her cart, she allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. If only her grandma could see this. Little Subin, cooking for a CEO and earning his praise. Nearby, disguised Mother Yun-hee silently cheered. This introduction had gone even better than she hoped. It was time for phase 2 of her plan, to bring these two together again in a more personal setting. Late Friday afternoon, Min-jun was wrapping up at the office when his secretary buzzed in. "Sir, your housekeeper Mrs. Lee is here. She says it's urgent." Min-jun frowned and told them to send her in. Mrs. Lee hurried in, wringing her hands. "Young master, I'm so sorry to drop this on you, but I have a family emergency. My daughter-in-law went into early labor and needs my help in Busan. I have to leave tonight." "Oh no, I hope everything will be all right," Min-jun said, concerned. "Please, go be with your family. Don't worry about the house." Mrs. Lee looked relieved, but also anxious. "Thank you, sir. I'll catch the next train. I've arranged a substitute to help at the house while I'm gone. The chairwoman's assistant actually recommended someone, very capable cook and house manager, since I might be away a couple of weeks." Min-jun was slightly surprised that his mother's staff had stepped in so quickly, but he merely nodded. "All right. Safe travels, and send my best to your family." That evening, when Min-jun arrived home at his spacious villa in Hanam-dong, he was greeted not by darkness and silence, as he'd expected without Mrs. Lee, but by the savory aroma of cooking and the sound of someone humming in the kitchen. Curious, he loosened his tie and followed the sounds. There, wearing a simple blouse, jeans, and an apron, was Han Subin, expertly stirring a pot on his stove. "Ms. Han," he said in disbelief. Subin spun around, nearly dropping her spoon. "Oh, Mr. Choi, good evening." She quickly bowed, cheeks coloring. I'm sorry, I let myself in. The agency said they informed you." It clicked in his mind. His mother's assistant must have arranged for this particular substitute. "They did inform me someone would come," he replied, eyes still wide. "I just didn't expect it to be you." Subin offered a hesitant smile. "Your mother's office contacted me earlier. They said you might not have anyone to cook or manage the house, and asked if I could help out short-term since I have experience running a kitchen. She bit her lip. I hope it's all right that I'm here. Minjun blinked, then let out a small laugh of amazement. Yes, of course. Please, you're doing me a huge favor. The initial shock melted into an inexplicable relief. Out of all the possible people, having her here felt oddly nice. She relaxed at his laughter. I made dinner. I hope you're hungry. Only now did he notice the table was already set for two, and that the smells were making his mouth water. I'm starved, he admitted. Minutes later, they sat across from each other at the dining table that usually felt far too large for one person. Tonight, it felt cozy at one end with just them. Minjun took a spoonful of the beef short rib soup she'd made and couldn't suppress a contented hum. This is delicious, he declared. Subin beamed. I'm glad you like it. As they ate, the conversation flowed surprisingly easily. They soon dropped the formal Mr. Choi and Ms. Han for their given names. Minjun learned that Subin had indeed been the one cooking at the community soup kitchen his mother's foundation supported. She spoke of how her parents had owned a small restaurant and taught her to cook with love, and how after they passed, her grandmother's encouragement kept her going. In turn, he found himself sharing more than he usually would, mentioning his father's early death and how it forced his mother to take over the family business. You must have been young, Subin said softly. That sounds very hard. It was, Minjun admitted. Mother did her best to fill both roles, but work kept her busy. I grew up mostly with tutors and boarding schools. I know she cares though. Trust me, she shows it in creative ways, he added with a chuckle, thinking of the situation that had landed Subin here. Subin laughed. Like sending a random cook to your house to feed you. Exactly. He laughed with her, the sound warm and genuine. She means well, but she can be a bit dramatic. They shared a conspiratorial smile. By the time the meal ended, a comfortable camaraderie had settled between them. After dinner, when Subin started clearing the plates, Minjun stood to help. She protested, but he waved her off. You cooked, I'll clean. Fair's fair. Soon they were washing and drying dishes side by side at the sink. The mundane task took on a light-hearted air. At one point, Minjun intentionally wiped a soapy finger across a plate she was drying, leaving a sudsy moustache on it. She looked at the plate, then at him, arching an eyebrow. Really? He tried to look innocent. I missed a spot. With a playful glint in her eye, Subin flicked a few droplets of water at him. There, rinsed. They both broke into laughter. The usually sterile kitchen echoed with an easy mirth it had never known. Watching her grin, her eyes crinkling with joy, Minjun felt a strange tug in his chest. Happiness. Simple, unforced happiness. He found himself thinking that the house already felt brighter with her in it. That night, after showing Subin to the cozy guest room and bidding her good night, Minjun retired to his own bedroom. Lying in bed, he realized he was looking forward to tomorrow in a way he hadn't in a long time. The next morning, sunlight filtered into the dining room as Minjun came downstairs. Drawn by the scent of something wonderful, he found the table set with a modest but inviting breakfast, steaming abalone porridge, a plate of fluffy steamed egg, and cut fruit. At the stove, Subin was just ladling the last of the porridge into a bowl. She looked up and greeted him with a bright, "Good morning, Minjun." "Good morning," he replied, a smile creeping onto his face. He couldn't remember the last time someone had breakfast ready for him, let alone such a comforting spread. They sat and ate together. The porridge was warm and nourishing. "I could get used to this," he said appreciatively, between spoonfuls. She gave a soft laugh. "Don't get too used to it. I'm only here until your housekeeper returns." He feigned a dramatic sigh. "I'll try not to be too heartbroken when you leave." Their eyes met, and they both smiled, a gentle warmth passing between them. After breakfast, Minjun offered her a tour of the house and garden. Under the mid-morning sun, they strolled the manicured grounds, chatting about the herbs she could use from the kitchen garden, and even picking a few cherry tomatoes to snack on. Each passing hour found them more at ease. By afternoon, they returned indoors and found themselves in the living room, casually talking on the couch over cups of tea. The initial employer-employee formality had given way to friendly familiarity. There was a quiet moment as their conversation lulled. Minjun took a deep breath, gathering a bit of courage. "Listen," he began gently, "about yesterday. If Yura, that woman, made you uncomfortable with what she implied, I'm sorry." Subin frowned slightly, recalling how Minjun's ex had barged in and looked down on her. "It's all right. It wasn't your fault." He ran a hand along the rim of his teacup, choosing his words. "The truth is, people like Yura think status and money are all that matter. It's exactly what I hate about my world." "I understand," she said quietly, turning to face him. "I've seen that kind of attitude. It's ugly." He met her gaze. There wasn't pity or judgment there, just understanding. Softly, he confessed, "When I'm with you, I don't feel that weight. It's just easy." A rosy flush colored her cheeks. She dropped her eyes shyly. "I feel it too. Being here with you, I can be myself." Relief and gratitude washed over him. She felt the same. Without thinking, Minjun broke into a bright smile. "In that case," he said impulsively, "since we have the rest of the day free, maybe we could do something fun. Not as a CEO and his helper, but just two people enjoying a Saturday." Subin tilted her head, clearly pleased by the suggestion. "All right," she agreed, her lips curving into an eager smile. They didn't need elaborate plans. The day passed peacefully as they enjoyed simple pleasures together, listening to music, swapping stories about school days. She giggled at the thought of him in a strict boarding school. He teased her about sneaking extra tteokbokki after school, as she admitted. With each hour, their bond deepened naturally. That night, a storm knocked out the power, leaving only the warm glow of a few candles as they sat at the kitchen island. The rain drummed on the roof as their eyes met in the intimate light, a gentle hush falling between them. "Storms like this always remind me of childhood," Subin said softly. She gazed at the flickering candle. "I used to be scared of thunder. My grandma would light candles and tell me stories to drown out the sound." Minjun smiled, propping his chin on his hand as he listened. "Tell me one of those stories." So as the storm raged outside, she began to narrate an old Korean folktale about a bear who became human through perseverance and love. Her voice was melodic and soothing. He watched the way the candlelight played over her gentle features and felt an ache of tenderness at how naturally she comforted him, even though he wasn't the one afraid of thunder. When she finished the tale, they realized the rain had eased and the thunder was distant. "I can see why that would comfort a child," he said quietly. "You have a very soothing presence." She blushed, looking down at her hands. "I've never really had someone to share these little memories with, besides family." "Well, you do now," he said softly. Subin lifted her eyes to find him watching her intently. A charged silence fell. In that moment, with the golden candle glow dancing between them, Minjun felt an overwhelming urge to close the small gap separating them. He leaned forward slightly, and she did too, drawn like a tide. They were mere inches apart. His eyes fell to her lips and her breath caught. When click, the light suddenly blazed back on, electricity restored. Both of them jumped and then laughed self-consciously as reality snapped back. The almost kiss hung in the air, unacknowledged but potent. Hearts pounding, they busied themselves extinguishing the now unnecessary candles. "Well," Subin ventured, cheeks warm, I should get some sleep. Yes, of course, Minjun replied, running a hand through his hair, trying to act casual. Good night, Subin. Good night, Minjun, she whispered. She turned to head upstairs, and he watched her go with 1,000 thoughts swirling in his head. We almost neither finished the thought aloud, but both felt it. The tender tension of that near kiss lingered as they went to bed, each lying awake for a long while, hearts fluttering with anticipation of what might soon be. Sunday passed in a blur of quiet contentment. By now, Minjun and Subin moved around each other with an easy rhythm, cooking together, chatting, even sharing comfortable silences. The walls Minjun had built around himself were beginning to crumble, bit by bit, warmed away by her genuine kindness and the soft glow of their growing affection. But their blissful bubble was about to burst. On Monday morning, Minjun headed to the office early for meetings. Subin stayed behind at the house, tidying up after breakfast and preparing to do some grocery shopping later. She was humming to herself in the foyer, making a list on her phone, when the doorbell rang. Wiping her hands on her apron, Subin opened the door and froze. Kang Yura stood on the doorstep, impeccably dressed and radiating cold confidence. Before Subin could speak, Yura pushed past the threshold. We need to talk, she said curtly, thrusting a sealed envelope into Subin's hands. The chairwoman has spoken. Pack your things. Subin's heart pounded as she pulled out the letter and read. It was on official letterhead from Choi Enterprises, addressed to her, stating that her services were no longer required and terminating her role effective immediately. At the bottom was Chairwoman Choi's elegant signature. I don't understand, Subin stammered, looking up in shock. Mrs. Choi had been so kind to her. Why would she do this? Yura crossed her arms, a smug smile on her lips. Did you think a rich family like the Schwa would ever truly accept someone like you? You're just a toy, my dear, a diversion for Minjun. That's not true, Subin protested, though her voice quavered. Yura sneered. Oh, do you know his mother has been testing you all along? This whole thing was a setup, and now she's bored of the game and clearly thinks you're not up to their standards. It hit Subin like a physical blow. Mrs. Choi, testing her. She did remember how oddly she met the chairwoman, volunteering in disguise as Auntie O. Was that all a ruse? Subin's hands trembled around the letter. If this letter was real, then perhaps the chairwoman really had orchestrated everything, and now was ending it. Why else would your position be terminated so suddenly? Yura purred, seeing the doubt and hurt on Subin's face. Face it, his mother never intended for you to last. Better to leave now, quietly, unless you want to be the reason Minjun defies his family and causes a scandal. You wouldn't want to drag him into a fight with his own mother, would you? Every word was poison, but some of it rang horribly true. Stories of powerful families forcing breakups flashed through Subin's mind. The thought of causing a rift between Minjun and his mother, the mother who had given Subin a chance in the first place, made her feel ill. Maybe stepping out of this fairy tale was the right thing. Perhaps she'd been living a dream that wasn't hers, as much as it tore at her. Maybe she should leave, for his sake. I understand, Subin said quietly, swallowing the lump in her throat. A triumphant glint appeared in Yura's eyes. Smart girl. Yura didn't even bother to help or say goodbye. She simply turned on her heel and let herself out, leaving Subin standing there in the silent house, the ornate letter shaking in her hands. An hour later, Minjun returned home unexpectedly early, unable to focus at work. He had left in a haze that morning, still thinking of candlelight and Subin's laughter. By 10 a.m., he'd decided any meeting could wait. He wanted to steal a bit more time with her. Subin, he called, stepping into the foyer. Odd, her shoes were gone from the mat. He noticed something on the entry table, her house key and a folded note with his name. His heart lurching, Minjun snatched up the note and read, Minjun, Thank you for everything. I'm sorry to leave so suddenly, but I must go. Please do not try to find me. I'll be fine. Soo-bin. He stared at the neat, polite lines, as if they were written in a foreign language. Leave? She was gone. Frantically, he checked the guest room. Empty. Her suitcase, her few belongings, gone. It was as if she'd vanished. No, he murmured. Something was very wrong. The note was heartbreakingly formal, nothing like the warm, open woman he'd spent the weekend with. Minjun's eyes fell on a second paper that had slipped out from beneath the note, an official letter bearing his mother's letterhead. As he read it, his disbelief turned to anger and confusion. Moments later, he was back in his car, speeding toward the address he had for Soo-bin's family restaurant. Meanwhile, Soo-bin sat curled on the steps behind her closed restaurant, a duffel bag by her side and her phone powered off to avoid the pain of it ringing. Tears she'd been holding in streamed freely now. Leaving that house and him had been the hardest thing she'd ever done. She kept replaying Yura's words and the letter's cold lines. Maybe it's for the best, she tried to convince herself. This was never my world. But her heart felt like it was shattering. Suddenly, she heard her name being called, yelled actually, over the patter of light rain that had begun. Soo-bin! Soo-bin! She stood, peering out to the empty early afternoon street. Through the drizzle, she saw Minjun, jacket soaked as he ran down the road, searching desperately, her breath caught. She hadn't expected him to come, not so fast. Before she could think, her feet were moving. She emerged from the alley into view. Minjun spotted her and broke into a sprint. The relief and anguish on his face were clear, even in the grey light. He stopped a few steps in front of her, chest heaving. Rainwater dripped from his hair. Why? He demanded, voice cracking. Why did you leave like that? Soo-bin's resolve almost crumbled right there. She'd never seen him look so distraught. She clutched the fabric of her skirt. Minjun, I had to. He shook his head fiercely. Was it my mother? Did she do this? He fished out the crumpled letter from his pocket. This letter. It isn't right. She wouldn't. Soo-bin's eyes flickered with hurt. It looks like she would. Minjun stepped closer, rain dripping off his chin. No, I don't buy it. He lowered his voice. Talk to me, please. She swallowed hard. Your mother. She's been testing me from the start, hasn't she? Disguising herself, watching me. Maybe she decided I'm not suitable after all. Realization and anger flared in Minjun's eyes. Yura must have twisted the truth. Soo-bin, whatever Yura told you is a lie. If my mother truly orchestrated this, it was only to find someone genuine. She wouldn't just cut you off. Certainly not like this. He looked at the letter again and nearly growled. I suspect Yura's hand in this. My mother's away and unreachable right now. Yura must have seized the chance. Soo-bin bit her lip, confusion plain on her face. She wanted to believe him, but the situation was such a mess of half-truths. Either way, I'm scared, Minjun. His eyes softened. Of what? She met his gaze, voice trembling. I'm scared because this, us, feels so perfect. And I'm terrified it will crumble under pressure. What if someday your family truly won't accept me? I couldn't bear being the cause of a rift between you and your mother. Minjun's heart twisted. He closed the distance between them and gently framed her face with his hands, rain be damned. Listen to me. You are not causing anything, he said firmly, brushing away a rain-mixed tear on her cheek with his thumb. If my mother has an issue, I'll handle it. And I'll handle Yura's lies too. Just don't give up on us, please. Tears welled in Soo-bin's eyes at his plea. The warmth of his palm steadied her. Minjun, I love you, hun Soo-bin, he whispered, emotion thick in his voice. It was the first time he'd said it out loud, and it poured out like a promise. I love you. I don't care what anyone says or does. That won't change. A soft sob escaped her lips as all her fear and sorrow melted into relief. "I love you too," she choked out, placing her hands over his. "So much." With a breath of pure gratitude, he pulled her into a kiss. It wasn't tentative or almost or interrupted this time. It was real and deep and overflowing with everything they felt. Subin rose on her toes, wrapping her arms around his neck as he drew her closer, both of them oblivious to the rain. When they finally parted, they stayed in each other's arms, foreheads touching as they caught their breath. Minjun closed his eyes, still gently cradling her face. "We'll face whatever comes together, okay?" She nodded, smiling through tears. "Okay." Just then, a black sedan pulled up to the curb. The back door opened and out stepped Choi Eun-hee. No disguise this time. "Minjun?" she called softly. They turned, startled. Minjun kept a protective arm around Subin as his mother approached, an unreadable expression on her elegant face. Eun-hee's own eyes were wet. She had gotten Minjun's frantic messages and pieces of the story from security. Seeing her son and Subin clinging to each other in the rain, both distraught, confirmed everything. "I'm sorry," Eun-hee said, voice gentle and sincere. "Mother," Minjun began, a million questions in his tone. "Did you—" She shook her head quickly. "No, that letter, this drama. It wasn't me. It was Yura. I only realized what she did after the fact." Eun-hee stepped closer, her hands clasped in front of her. She looked at Subin directly. "My dear, I am so sorry you were hurt." Subin, still wrapped in Minjun's arm, bit her lip. "Mrs. Choi, did you really volunteer in disguise to test me?" Eun-hee managed a rueful smile. "I did. That part is true. I played Auntie O, scheming mother and would-be Cupid." Her eyes softened. "But I never intended to end things. Quite the opposite. I was going to reveal myself and bless the relationship once I was sure what you two felt was real. And it is." Minjun's shoulders sagged in relief. He had wanted to trust his mother's intentions, and here she was, proving him right. "Mother, you're unbelievable," he muttered, though a grin tugged at his lips. Eun-hee gave a tentative smile. "I know. I promise. No more disguises or secret tests." She looked between her son and the young woman tucked at his side. "I wanted my son to find true love, and he has." Tears slipped from Subin's eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. "Does that mean you approve of me?" she asked in a small voice. Eun-hee answered by opening her arms and stepping forward. Subin released Minjun and moved into the older woman's embrace. The rain had slowed to a mist as the two women hugged, one sobbing quietly in relief, the other stroking her hair in comfort. "I couldn't ask for a better daughter-in-law," Eun-hee whispered emotionally. She pulled back and added with a touch of her usual spunk, "If you'll still have our crazy family, that is." Subin let out a wet laugh. Yes, of course." Minjun slipped his arm around both of them, and the three walked to the car. As they settled inside, he held Subin's hand firmly, never intending to let go again. In the back seat, mother and son exchanged a look, hers apologetic, his forgiving. Without words, they understood each other. Eun-hee reached over and squeezed her son's free hand. "Thank you for trusting your heart," she said softly. "Both of you." Minjun glanced at Subin, who leaned against his shoulder, exhausted but smiling softly. He squeezed back. "Thank you, Mother." They had weathered the storm, literally and figuratively, and come out stronger on the other side. Later that afternoon, back at the Choi family estate, dry and warm, they gathered in Eun-hee's study for a proper clearing of the air. Over hot tea, Eun-hee formally explained everything to Subin. How she had indeed been Auntie O from the soup kitchen to the cleaning lady in the house, how she'd been thoroughly impressed by Soo Bin's character, and how she'd orchestrated events not to toy with her, but to give the couple space to fall in love naturally. She also expressed deep regret for not anticipating Yura's interference. I went overboard, and because of that, Yura found an opportunity to strike, Eun-hee said, shaking her head. I feel responsible for the pain you two went through today. I truly am sorry. Min-jun, sitting beside Soo Bin on the sofa, reached over to take his mother's hand. It was a crazy plan, he said with a half smile. But it worked. Just maybe consult me next time you decide to play fairy godmother. Eun-hee laughed, wiping a tear. No more meddling, I swear. Soo Bin felt like a weight had been lifted completely. The acceptance shining in Eun-hee's face was unmistakable. Thank you, she said earnestly to the older woman, for giving me a chance and for caring so much about your son. Eun-hee stood and came around the coffee table to envelop both Soo Bin and Min-jun in a warm hug. You two have made me so happy, she sniffled, then composed herself with a bright smile. Now enough tears. We have a celebration to plan. Once all this drama settles, perhaps a nice family dinner to officially welcome you, Soo Bin. Min-jun chuckled. Maybe something low-key, Mom. We've had enough theatrics. Soo Bin leaned into him, heart full. Low-key dinner sounds perfect. In that moment, they felt like a true family. Unconventional path and all, 6 months later. The Choi estate was abuzz with celebration once again. This time, for an occasion far more intimate and joyous than a corporate birthday gala. Under the spring blossoms in the garden, tables were arranged for an engagement party. Close friends, a few relatives, and colleagues mingled as laughter and music filled the air. Soo Bin stood near a table of refreshments, greeting guests with a radiant smile. She looked enchanting in a soft lilac dress with traditional hanbok accents. Every now and then, her eyes sought out Min-jun across the garden. He was never far, constantly glancing her way with an easy, besotted grin. When their gazes met, it was as if they communicated an entire conversation in a split second. Can you believe this? We're so lucky. Both of them never stopped marveling at how swiftly life had changed for the better. After a round of heartfelt toasts, and a few joking ones about secret identities and cleaning ladies that made everyone laugh, Chairwoman Choi clinked her glass for attention. All heads turned as the elegant matriarch spoke. I'd like to share a little story, Eun-hee announced, winking at the couple. I've been known to be a rather hands-on mother, perhaps even sneaky at times. There were chuckles from those who knew. Min-jun shook his head, smiling. Eun-hee continued. When I saw my son locking his heart away, I took an unorthodox approach to help him find its key. It involved some janitorial work, a wig, and a very kind young woman who thankfully has a sense of humor. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Min-jun covered his face briefly in playful embarrassment, and Soo Bin giggled, squeezing his arm. Eun-hee raised her glass toward them. All that matters is that it led to this moment. I couldn't be prouder of the man my son has become since finding someone who sees him for him, and I couldn't ask for a more wonderful daughter-in-law. To Min-jun and Soo Bin, may your love continue to grow in honesty and joy. Cheers. Gyeonbae, everyone cheered, echoing her toast. As the guests applauded, Min-jun took Soo Bin's hand and led her to the center of the garden. A soft melody began to play, and under twinkling lights, they swayed together for their first dance. Soo Bin gazed up at him, eyes shining. What do you think the future holds? She whispered. Min-jun gently pulled her closer around the waist. Lots of love, he murmured. Maybe a little chaos, if Mom stays true to form. They both glanced affectionately at Eun-hee, who was already animatedly recounting a highly sanitized version of her undercover escapade to a group of amused guests. They shared a laugh. Then Soo Bin rested her head against his chest as they continued to dance. The world around them faded until it was just the two of them in their own little universe. She looked up at him with so much love that his heart felt as if it might overflow. "We'll make our own authenticity," she said softly. "Promise me we'll always be open and honest, like we are now." He pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. "I promise. No more secrets," he replied, eyes warm and sincere. "Well, except maybe surprise birthday parties. And maybe a silly disguise or two for old time's sake," she added impishly. He chuckled, spinning her under his arm once before drawing her back against him. "Deal." As the song came to an end, Minjun cupped Subin's cheek and leaned down to kiss her, slow and sweet, right there beneath the blossom-laden tree. Their friends hooted and clapped, and Subin giggled against his lips before kissing him again, unabashed and joyous. Eunhee dabbed a happy tear from her eye as she watched her son and soon-to-be daughter-in-law lost in each other. All the subterfuge and effort had been worth it. Her family was whole and brimming with love. Later that evening, after most guests had departed, Minjun and Subin wandered back to the balcony off the living room, looking out at the twinkling Seoul skyline. It was near this very spot that Minjun had once stood lonely and guarded. Now, he stood hand in hand with the love of his life. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Subin sighed, leaning into him. "Very," he agreed, though his eyes were on her. Behind them, Eunhee peeked through the doorway, making sure everything was in order. She caught sight of the couple silhouetted against the city lights, sharing soft whispers and tender looks. Smiling, she quietly slid the door closed to give them privacy, her heart full. On the balcony, Minjun wrapped his arms around Subin from behind. She rested her hands over his. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. They simply listened to each other's steady breathing and the distant sounds of the city night. Finally, Minjun whispered, "I can hardly remember what it was like before you, and I never want to go back to that." Subin turned in his arms to face him. "You'll never have to," she said, standing on tiptoe to plant a soft kiss on his lips. He sighed happily, resting his forehead against hers. In that gentle kiss was the promise of everything to come, a life built on love and authenticity, with his fair share of laughter, and perhaps a little dramatics, courtesy of mother. Their journey had all the hallmarks of a classic drama, comedy, misunderstandings, twists and turns, but it was their story, and it was just beginning. Minjun kissed Subin once more under the night sky, the two of them smiling so widely they could hardly kiss properly, and as he held her close, he silently thanked whatever twist of fate and meddlesome mother had brought this incredible woman into his life. This time, there were no walls around his heart. Han Subin had swept them all away, and in their place was a love that was genuine and true. It was a love that had been tested and had triumphed, a love they knew would last a lifetime.